Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and we are here today to talk about all the new spoilers that are coming out of Dominaria. Yes, Wizards of the Coast, thank you very much. You've accidentally, spilled the beans to us all. No problem. I have no problem with these sort of surprises. I absolutely love it. I love peeking into the future at what goodies that we have available to us. I glanced at the set. It's very interesting. Feels, for someone who played since, the year 1999, it feels like it's pulling me back in that era. We're seeing saprolings. We see wizards. We see aggressively costed creatures, things that are like white, white, white. I think like red, red, red. None of this like one black, four colorless sort of stuff. So very aggressively costed creatures and spells. Bringing legendary back. Legendary going to be a big thing. They have legendary sorceries. We have legendary creatures all over the place. I love legendary. It's going to be a great set. If you love wizards, well, this set is for you. You're going to change your underwear at least 5 times while going through the spoiler. They've got wizards for you. But they also have some merfolk, and a lot of interesting cards, I think, for Modern. Going on with the wizard thing, wizard is good for merfolk, actually, because this is going to be a wizard-themed set, and I imagine that future ones... Like, wizard is one of the bigger creature types, so whatever they do to support wizards might end up helping support merfolk. We're going to start this bombshell off with Merfolk Trickster. Blue, it's a Merfolk wizard, which is great because that will still continue the wizard thing with Merfolk. We have a lot of wizards: Cursecatcher, Silvergill Adept, Master of Waves, Harbinger of the Tides, Tidebinder Mage, Mutavault. So we'll get into that in a second. So it's a 2/2 Merfolk wizard. It has Flash. When Merfolk Trickster enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. It loses all abilities until end of turn. It didn't look like much to me at first, but the deeper I dug into the creatures in Modern, the more interesting this ability becomes. What it basically says, target creature becomes a vanilla creature. And we'll get into that. So very important to note that they explain here in this sort of gatherer explanation that if there is an ability on the stack already, you can't flash in Merfolk Trickster in response to get rid of it. So like if Primeval Titan enters the battlefield and the trigger hits to get the lands, there's nothing you can do about it. If you Merfolk Trickster in response, it's not going to do anything. And also very important, if any creature has the ability of like written as **XX in their power and toughness, it would just die instantly, or it would become a 0/0 essentially. And in the case of Tarmogoyf, because it has *1, it becomes a 0/1 creature. So you can let a Tarmogoyf attack, flash in Merfolk Trickster, make it become a 0/1 vanilla creature, and this gang block it with all your creatures, and your opponent, no matter what they put in the graveyard, it doesn't matter. They would have to kill all your creatures in order to save their Tarmogoyf. And the similar thing would happen with Grim Flare. If they attack, you Trickster it, and then... so now if it connects with you, they don't get their triggered ability, and it just becomes a 2/2 creature, which you can comfortably block with all your stuff. This is probably some sort of replacement for Water Trap Weaver, a card that I like a lot. Very good proactive card. This thing is proactive as well, but it also helps on the draw, and it's going to make a lot of our other spells better. So it's probably a replacement for Water Trap Weaver, because it has a very similar effect, but the huge upside of Flash. That is going to make our 2-mana counter spells so much stronger. We're talking Negate. We're talking Unified Will. We could be talking Deprive, and maybe we'll be even talking a card that's coming up in this spoiler. But the point is, those counter spells are very clunky, very hard to hold up. But if we just put 1 or 2 creatures in play, we can start holding up those counter spells immediately, because if our opponent doesn't do anything where we have to use these counter spells, then we just flash in the Merfolk Trickster to add to the board while still holding up those counter spells. And we're not obligated to tap out. We have the potential to now widen our range even further. Harbinger of the Tides costs 4 mana. Really hard to get to that mana. 2 mana, not so hard. We're going to get Merfolk Trickster online, and we can also get our 2 mana counter spells online. So that's going to help us in a lot. That's going to help us against Titan Shift a lot. So we don't have to commit too much stuff to the board, and we are ready to counter very important spells like Anger the Gods or Primeval Titan or a lot of different things, while still being able to add things to the table. Not to mention, Primeval Titan hits the table. It's going to get Valakuts and stuff like that, but usually that's not enough for us to die. It's when Primeval Titan attacks the next turn, which we are in trouble. So we actually have another turn available to us with Merfolk Trickster. We can flash this thing at their beginning of combat step, tap down the Tarmogoyf, tap down the Primeval Titan, and we'll be in good shape to have at least one more turn to close out the game. This also, against Amulet Titan, this thing is really good because the opponent will get Primeval Titan, it will enter the battlefield, and then they'll search out the lands to give the Primeval Titan haste, and then after that we flash in Merfolk Trickster and tap the damn thing, and then it won't get its second triggers, and that's a huge blowout for that deck. So, yeah, I think that's very, very good. I don't think this is going to replace Harbinger of the Tides. I think that this thing is pretty good. It's very good on the play, still pretty good on the draw, but not as good. Harbinger of the Tides is much better on the draw because you're going to bounce creatures back to your opponent's hand, and it's going to take a lot of resources for them to recast the thing. And I also think Merfolk Trickster synergizes very well with Harbinger of the Tides. Incredibly well. So we're probably going to want to use both of these creatures at the same time. Merfolk Trickster is also a little awkward in combat on the draw, or just awkward in combat because your opponent's going to declare their attackers, and then you're going to have to flash in the Trickster. You tap something down, and then your opponent can reconsider their attack. Maybe they're not going to make a big attack. Maybe they're not going to do anything at all. Whereas with Harbinger, you let them attack, and then they're committed to it, and then you blow them out with some sort of bounce. But still, it's going to be a big deal. It's still going to interact with people in combat. It can tap anything. It can tap Gurmag Anglers, Death Shadows, any of the Eldrazi, Wormcoil Engines. It's a very interesting card. It's going to also be good against Tron. It's going to help us even more against Tron than it ever did before, because it's just enough. Tron is a deck where you just want to put like 2 creatures onto the battlefield and then start holding up your counter spells, and just more creatures with flash makes us stronger against Tron. Another thing is this card makes Platinum Empyrean and Platinum Angel look like a joke. So they play these creatures that say basically that we can't win the game, but then we just play Merfolk Trickster and the ability gets shut off, and then, boom, we win the game. So that's going to be good. That's really nice to have that sort of insurance against especially the new Blue Moon decks who are playing with Platinum Empyrean with the Madcap Experiment combo. We did have the resources against those decks with like Echoing Truth, Vapor Snag, or most importantly, we had the old combo of Mirror Regery and Harbinger of the Tides, but it's sort of a combo we have to get online. Merfolk Trickster is just a 1-card win condition right then and there, shutting off that combo. It has some effect against Counters Company. It will buy us a turn. We can target the Heritage Druid or the Vizier, and it will buy us a turn. Not great, in my opinion, not amazing, but it would still buy us a turn if we really need it. It interacts with Affinity, so we can tap things, or even even greater. Here's the thing. Disables flying. Think about that. It disables flying, takes flying away from creatures. So you let creatures attack, and then you can flash in Merfolk Trickster and make them lose flying. You can make Mantis Rider lose flying. You can make Flicker Wisp lose flying. You can make anything from Affinity blockable all of a sudden. Great card against Affinity. Fantastic. Oh, it's so annoying, those Vault Scourges. So annoying! It doesn't even have flying, for crying out loud. So, yeah, it's going to be playable. This thing's going to be playable. And if we just talk about it generally, it's going to be great on offense. It's going to be great on offense. Harbinger of the Tide's terrible on offense. Has always been terrible. Was never good on offense. Great on defense, and that's what we wanted him for. So Merfolk Trickster, going to play a part in defense. Going to play a huge part on offense. Just like with Mirror Regery, we can now tap two creatures down. Going to make a big deal. Oh, and by the way, this makes the mirror match just unbelievably stupid. Like, the games can play out so weird in so many different ways. This thing just adds so much more complication to the matter. If you have a Master of Waves in play and target your Master of Waves with this, all the elementals die. If your opponent attacks with creatures, you can just target Merfolk Trickster, like the Lord giving all the island walk. This thing, it is as tricksy as it's advertised. It is as tricksy as it's advertised. I'm pretty sure this thing is going to see play. I don't know what we're replacing for it yet, but it's a really good addition. It might be one of the nicer cards we've seen since Harbinger of the Tides was added to the deck. I would find it really hard to believe if this thing doesn't become playable. This thing looks really, really good. So I'm hoping for really good stuff out of Merfolk Trickster. Okay, so moving on. There are other cards in the set. Some relevant, some not. So the next one I'd like to look at is the Wizard's Retort. This is a double blue 1 generic instant. It's a counterspell. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. And it's just counter target spell. So if we have Curse Catcher, Silvergill Adept, Harbinger of the Tides, the Merfolk Trickster, Water Trap Weaver, Master of Waves, these things will turn this thing on. This is going to have to be play tested. I am not so confident in this because if you don't have that wizard, then this thing is just This thing is just a 3-mana counter, which is really discouraging. We're probably going to have that wizard pretty often. On the other hand, like, double blue is hard. Like, we already have Deprive available, but Deprive is really hard to cast if you want to play with Cavern of Souls, which I think we do a decent chunk of the time. And so if you want to play with Deprive, you have to take out Cavern of Souls. If you want to play with this card, you have to take out Cavern of Souls. There's just no way that you can play this double blue counter spell with so many brown lands, with like Mutavault, Cavern of Souls in the deck. It's just not going to happen. And sometimes Gemstone Caverns if you're one of those guys. So yeah, not looking so hopeful for Wizards Retort. It would have been great if it was like a blue 2 generic and it cost 1 less for each wizard you control. That would have been amazing, but unfortunately that's not the case. But what I am hopeful about this is that they're going to print more wizard stuff. They're going to print more wizard stuff, and something is going to be good for us. We have a lot of wizards, which also include Mutavault. I didn't talk about Mutavault for this, because if you have to activate Mutavault to turn on Wizard's Retort, then it's costing you 3 mana anyway. But yeah, so this is making me hopeful that they're going to make some more cool stuff for wizards. They do have another Merfolk, giving it Flash again. This is very interesting. So it's a blue and 4 generic for a Merfolk soldier. It's a 3/3 creature with Flash. It's called Sentinel of the Pearl Trident. That feels so classic. You know, we're going back to Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. Pearl Trident's making a comeback. So when Sentinel of the Pearl Trident enters the battlefield, you may exile target historic permanent. Those are going to be artifacts, legendaries, or saga cards. You'll have to look at the spoiler to know what all these things are. Exile target historic permanent you control. If you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So for the most part, this is, this end of the battlefield effect is useless to us. The interesting thing about this design is that they gave the creature flash. So we had like Harbinger of the Tides, we've got Merfolk Trickster, we have Sentinel of the Pearl Trident, and also out of the last Ixalan block, they actually gave us some Flash Merfolk. There was a Flash Merfolk for double green and one colorless. They're giving Merfolk Flash. That is definitely something we want to see more of going into the future. More Flash makes our counterspell so much stronger. It opens up our range even more. It's definitely something that we're going to want to see more and more of, and I think it's going to better enable Merfolk into the future. So I like the direction that they're going with just throwing Flash on all of our Merfolk. It's something that we need as a clunky deck. We need more options available. When we tap out to play our Merfolk, that is not good for us because it gives our opponent usually perfect board state information. They know they don't have to play around like spot removal spells or counter spells. They know the creatures' power and toughness are perfect. But if we have more and more creatures with flat, like if we have 4 mana and pass to our opponent, now we could have anything. We could have creature removal counter spells. We could have Merfolk Trickster. We could have Harbinger of the Tides. So much harder for our opponent to play against us. And so if we can increase the number of flash creatures that are playable that we can play, it will better enable our deck and make it so much harder for our opponents to play against us. So that's all I wanted to say. It's great that they're pushing Flash on Merfolk so much. Here's something interesting, Damping Sphere. So now I'm just looking at cards that I found interesting out of Dominaria. And so we got Damping Sphere. It's a 2-mana artifact. If a land is tapped for 2 or more colors, it produces a colorless instead of any other type and amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. So an obvious nod to Tron. There was a time where Wizards were making cards for the Eternal formats, for Modern, for Legacy. And then there was a period where they said, we made a huge mistake when we did that. Mental Misstep was a mistake. Deathrite Shamans was a mistake. Do you know what? We're going to just stop doing that. We're not even going to care. And do you know what? I think now they're going back because this is obviously to be played against Tron. They're responding to, I would say, some outcries in the community. It's very interesting. I don't know if everyone knows this, but I remember, I believe it was Turn 1 Thoughtseize created some poll online about what cards people wanted to see banned out of Modern. And very interestingly, number 1 unanimously was the Tron lands. I had no idea people hated Tron so much, especially since that there are quite a few decks that can just easily deal with Tron. And maybe as Merfolk players, we never realized how terrible Tron is because we're so well enabled to beat that archetype. But as we see in the last few big opens, Tron is in big numbers at the top tables. In my opinion, like it's I don't want to say it's like ban worthy, but their big event results are very similar to like Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin. Like very similar, very, very similar, where they're in big numbers deep in the tournament, and they banned Splinter Twin, they banned Birthing Pod for these sort of results. And I don't think they want to ban the Tron lands, so this might be like just a step in the direction. Just like how they created a lot of graveyard hate, maybe this is something that they're trying to do to, weaken Tron without banning the thing. I don't know. It has a good casting cost. It's not bad. Not bad. All right, moving on. Sorcerer's Wand. This was interesting because we do play a lot of Wizards, so it's a 1 generic artifact. It's an equipment. And equipped creature has tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. If this creature is a wizard, it deals 2 damage to that player or planeswalker instead. Unfortunately, the equipped cost is 3. I was slightly excited by this card because, at the very least, it gave us a little bit of game against Lantern Control. You could equip this to a creature, one of our wizards, deal 2 damage to them, and hopefully we could chain it several times in a turn. But unfortunately, the equip 3 makes it too expensive. If it was more affordable at 2, we could close out the game relatively comfortably against maybe a Lantern player. It's not a great answer, to be honest. It's like if you think about it, Echoing Truth is just better. And I was trying to think, what else is this good against? It'd be fine against Control, just fine, but nothing special. But I thought it was interesting. It would be nice to have an equipment that we could play in Merfolk. There's really nothing, aside from Sword of Fire and Ice, there's nothing really particularly special. So here's like one of those aggressively costed creatures, green, green, green. We got the Steel Leaf Champion, an Elf Knight. It's a 5/4 creature, so it's out of Lightning Bolt range. And you need to work hard to kill it with Fatal Push. And it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So, whenever I look at a creature like this, I'm like thinking, holy cow, this thing could be out on turn 2 with a Mana Dork. This thing looks ridiculous. So, I don't know, maybe this gives Green Stompy a little bit more to work with. And yeah, that's about it. So, that is Dominaria for you. Dominaria's coming back. We're gonna see Karn, we're gonna see Urza, but I'm glad that they didn't forget that Merfolk are back there in Dominaria. So, Merfolk. Going back to Merfolk Trickster, maybe the brother or sister of Cozy's Trickster, Merfolk Trickster. This is a serious card. This is going to be very interesting to playtest. I'd like to know what else people know about this card. Like what other interactions does it have in Modern that I didn't think about? I went through a lot of the archetypes. It's very interesting. It's also very good right now in the metagame. It hits like all the relevant creatures. It's going to kill Phantasmal Image against humans. It's just so good in that manner. Yeah, like it hits Affinity, Eldrazi-tron, Death Shadow, humans. So it's gonna be playable. Anyway, so that is my look at all of the spoiled cards that are very interesting coming out of Dominaria. This has been Nikachu, and I'll see you guys next time.